Hi everyone, my name is Kim. I also go by Iffy, and I was the operations lead for this project. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to show you what I worked on. What we have here is our COVID-19 reporting web application. It's for doctors to submit their radiology reports for patients with COVID-19. I created this index page that displays all of the patient data. If you click on here, I also created the patients page, which displays primarily basic patient information such as the patient ID, age, sex, race, etc. I also created this exams page that shows primarily the patient's exam information, as well as X-ray images for each patient. There's also an update and delete feature. I also created this create patient page where you can input new patient information and update the patient's list. I found that the most challenging part of this project for me was being the operations lead. I really had to step up and be a leader and make sure that everybody was on the same page and make sure that everybody had what they needed to succeed. I found that even though I was working primarily on front end, I also had to dabble into back end as well as database to make sure that everything was working properly. This meant a lot of responsibility. However, the challenge was a great learning experience, and I learned a brand new tech stack that I never used before. I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Eddie.
Hi, my name is Eddie. I primarily worked on the database as well as the backend for this project. If I can share screen real quick, we had mocked up a UML diagram to help show how data should flow within our database. As you can see, everything is properly put together. Later on, helping implement that into MongoDB, where we have things properly sorted with the exam results put into their own table and then patient info in its own area. And this in turn had me learning the relationship between the controllers, models, and routers to make sure that the relationship with the database was okay so that it was drawing the correct information and nothing out of the ordinary. So I'll turn it over to Favor.
Hello, my name is Favor Boko, and I worked on the front end team to create the create exam page as well as the update exam page. What I did here was allow the user to input data that would be used for the exams. And once you would add that data, it would display on the exam list and into the database as well. We can also see here that if you go to the exam page, I also created the update exam page where you would be able to input that data, change any data that you would need to as well. I would say the most difficult part about this was making sure that it would actually show up in the exam list and making sure the data would actually be transported into the database. But I'll pass it off to Maya now.
Hi, I'm Maya Tamby. I worked on the back end of this project with the controllers. The controllers are the link between the data models along with the routers to the front end of this project. I will share my screen to show some of the code here. So there are 3 separate controller files: patients, items, and exams. And a key component to controllers is really communication, because my teammates who created the data and the routers, they're dependent on the controllers being established to make their work viewable to the users. Obstacles I faced was really learning on the fly and adjusting to new technologies that I had no prior experience with, but it was a great learning experience, and I will pass it off to Dapo.
Hi, my name is Dapo, and I was on the front end part of this project. I worked on exam table and patient table, and I was pretty much in charge of what was seen on the index page and all of this. A challenge that I had on this project was working on front end itself. This was pretty much my first time, being part of a front end team, and everything front end was very new to me, new syntax, new terms, and everything. I did face a couple of challenges and obstacles, and some of them are, adding hyperlink to text, editing accessors, and, just using the new software in general. All these were pretty new to me. And yeah, with that being said, I will hand over the mic to Daniel.
Hi, my name is Daniel Carrasco, and I'm part of the front end team for this project.
My job consisted of creating and shifting around buttons for the navigation tab, as well as organize some of the information for the exam page seen here. I made sure that every column was titled properly and that each row had consistent information in regards to each column that it's under. In order to fetch the right information from the Mongo database, I had to go on VS Code and ensure that the accessor as well as the return information properly followed the path key findings. And I did that for every column shown here, and it correctly fetched the right information. A challenge that came to mind while doing this was there were some columns that needed to be deleted, and nothing could be done from my code in order to make that change. So what this project had taught me was, since it being my first front end role, I learned that communication was also very important with your teammates. I've communicated with Dapo, who was also a member of the front end team, and we managed to work together to delete those columns that were not necessary and handle that situation pretty well. I will now pass you on to Yamilet.
Hi, my name is Yamilet Gutierrez. I will start by sharing my screen in order to highlight some of the files that I worked on. So I mostly worked on backend. In backend, I worked on routing for exams and patients, as you can see with these files here, middleware in server.js, testing route controller connections, such as this file, and that's within the testing routes and controller folder, as well as an exams table in the front end. I approached the routes challenge by looking at each template file and figuring out the relationships between each file. That helped me on both the back end and front end piece to really understand how everything connects. And now I will hand off the mic over to Kim.
If we could start this project all over again, what we would do differently would be to start from scratch instead of using the skeleton repository. The reason for this is because we found that it took a lot of time to dissect the skeleton and figure out what the code was telling us to do before we could add on top of that. All in all, it was a great learning experience for all of us, and we learned a lot. And we are really proud of our end product.